Okay, so I decided to do these two movies together because, well, one of them's a sequel. They're both entries into the Netflix Vanessa Hudgens Christmas canon, and the second one has a surprise twist at the end that had me actually yelling at my TV. For the sake of clarity, and because I don't remember their names super well, I will be referring to the characters as Baker Vanessa, Princess Vanessa, and then in the second movie, we will add Evil Twin Vanessa into the mix. That's it. There's no more preamble. We're just going to jump right in. In Chicago, Baker Vanessa and her friend Kevin prepare for the holidays. She's sad because Christmas was a special time for her and her ex. Kevin surprises Baker Vanessa with an invite to a baking competition put on by the royal family of Belgravia. All of these fake European countries in movies have these weirdly similar sounding names. In this movie, we have Belgravia. In The Princess Diaries, we have Genovia. In The Christmas Prince, we have Aldovia. Baker Vanessa initially refuses to go to the competition because she's a good little capitalist and wants to work through the holidays. Then she runs into her ex on the street. She tries to ask him to hang out, but whoops, he has a new girlfriend and they're leaving the city to spend the holidays together with his family. She tries to one-up the new girlfriend by telling them that she's flying to Europe for the baking contest. So essentially the entire plot only happens because she wants to spite her ex and win the breakup, which is toxic as because she's trying to prove to him and his new girlfriend that she's totally fine. She's totally doing okay. Here's a tip. If you're constantly trying to prove to your ex that you're doing fine, you need to stop. It's not healthy. All it's doing is hurting you and putting your own happiness on hold because you're comparing yourself to them. Baker Vanessa flies to Belgravia with Kevin and his daughter Olivia, whose mother is dead? Gone? Unclear at this point. They get there and they goggle at everything. Ooh, it's all so pretty. They get set up in their baking studio and Vanessa spills something on her apron. She runs to go get cleaned up and runs into Princess Vanessa. What the that accent? It sounds like the vague attempt at a British accent that every kid in my high school madrigal choir did. I'm the Princess of Montenaro. Princess Vanessa of Montenaro is the fiancée of Prince Edward of Belgravia. She invites Baker Vanessa to the palace on the pretense of brainstorming about a wedding cake, but insists the visit must be kept secret. When Baker Vanessa arrives, of course, Princess Vanessa says it was all a lie. She doesn't want a cake from her. She actually wants to swap places. Her excuse is some flimsy, I want to really live and find out what it's like to be a normal girl excuse. It doesn't super make sense. Baker Vanessa bargains for Olivia to be sponsored by the Crown in this ballet summer program that Belgravia puts on as her payment for agreeing to the swap. So she's getting something tangible out of it, but it kind of seems like Princess Vanessa's reason for wanting to switch is the name of the movie is The Princess Switch, and therefore we must switch places. They're going to switch back at midnight on Christmas Eve. I'm not sure the reasoning for why it has to be midnight that they have to switch back. Midnight's just a cool sounding time to do something by. There's also no reason at all not to tell Baker Vanessa's friends about what they're doing. It actually makes less sense for them not to tell them. They hand wave it away in what we will come to recognize as this super flimsy, but we must keep it a secret justification that they use in both movies. In reality, the reason for keeping it a secret is so we can have a bunch of gags where Princess Vanessa doesn't understand how to be a poor, and Kevin can laugh at her and say, oh, ha ha ha, I never realized how funny and spontaneous you were. Their training montage for swapping places is very Parent Trap. Baker Vanessa has to practice the super fake accent, and Princess Vanessa has to practice walking like a poor, which means that she walks like this. Touch my heart for sure. All these things and more. Because yes, that's how poor people walk. They take off Baker Vanessa's ponytail extension and give her the same hideous flipped out hairstyle that Princess Vanessa wears and load her down with hairspray. Once the titular switch has been made, Baker Vanessa is tested by her first encounter with the prince.
You seem to keep staring at it.
Oh, well, I have a lazy eye.
That one got a pretty genuine laugh out of me. Honestly, it's the finger guns for me. Princess Vanessa playing Baker Vanessa is giving me really awkward bisexual vibes. So this lady, Mrs. Donatelli, who is Princess Vanessa's closest confidant, is allowed to know everything so the switch can go smoothly. But Kevin, who is Baker Vanessa's closest confidant, can't know so things can go smoothly, even though he has a pretty high likelihood of figuring things out. Baker Vanessa gets to hang out in the palace wearing these old, I killed my husband for the money slippers, but she doesn't have the matching feathery robe. You know the one. The prince comes to talk to her, and she's into him because they both love planning things. Of course she's into him. He looks like her ex, but with more personality than a soggy napkin. The next morning at breakfast, Baker Vanessa's knowledge is tested, and the king sends his lackey to keep an eye on Vanessa because he's suspicious of her. The prince has decided to cancel all of his state meetings to spend time with his bride-to-be, throwing a wrench into the carefully laid plans of the switcherees. I know this is meant to be kind of sweet and relatable, but he's a head of state. He just blew off his important meetings with other countries. How long have they been engaged for him to only now give a about spending time with her? Was it that random talk about planning and schedules that suddenly made him think that his future wife might not suck so much that he actually wants to spend time with her before the wedding? The princess wardrobe consists of all of these almost but not quite identical pink outfits, and it's so frustrating. I keep thinking it's the same day and then realizing it's actually a different outfit with just slight variations. Baker Vanessa tries to emergency call Princess Vanessa to let her know about the prince situation, but Princess Vanessa doesn't pick up. Olivia sees the name on the phone and figures out what's what.
Nothing. Just a dropped signal.
Would you like to borrow mine?
She could have just said that the person she was calling didn't pick up. I really don't understand why she didn't just say that. It's just a very weird thing to say when the standard would be, oh, they just didn't pick up. The prince takes his betrothed horseback riding because she's supposed to be a great rider. And so of course she has to fall off and everything is awkward. My favorite part of this scene though is when she walks in and the rack focus can't quite get her in focus. We also get a scene of the master baker messing up breakfast, but only Kevin's daughter notices anything is up there. Frank the lackey is following them around suspiciously for really no reason. Nobody has any idea that this wild thing could be going on. To them, she's just acting a little funny, so the vehement suspicion seems a bit much. Prince Edward is like great value Benedict Cumberbatch. His sleepy looks like he took a Benadryl 30 minutes before filming. They have a nice horse riding date, and we go to Olivia and Princess Vanessa, who have gone to a cafe to talk over some hot cocoa. Are they aware you can see pretty far into that mug and see that it's totally empty? Like, I know that they're never actually drinking stuff, but usually they try to hide it. Here it's just like, yep, we're just gonna let the camera see the whole inside of the mug that's completely empty while she's sipping out of it. Princess Vanessa explains everything to Olivia, and Kevin shows up to start the day. Princess Vanessa shreds up the schedule she was supposed to follow, and Kevin is shocked. He's already been floored by her drastic haircut, and now he's weirded out by her sudden spontaneous behavior. Okay, this is so weird to me. Baker Vanessa is supposed to be his best friend, and he knows that she's in a super bad mental place around the holidays because of her ex, and she's suddenly cutting off all her hair and acting super different than she usually does. He needs to be asking if she's okay, not drooling over how he actually thinks that she's now that she's not planning every minute of every day. There's more predictable shenanigans where they have near misses of getting caught in their lies. They almost run into each other. The two Vanessas slowly fall in love with the friend and fiance of the other Vanessa. At one point, Princess Vanessa even sits down to watch Baker Vanessa's favorite movie, which is apparently the Netflix movie A Christmas Prince. Keep that in the back of your mind. Just put a pin in that one. My favorite bit is where Baker Vanessa gets excited and hugs the prince. He looks surprised and...
Oh, sorry. That, wasn't very dignified.
It's all right. I liked it, actually.
That man has never been touched by a woman before. Look at his face. Frank has figured out who Baker Vanessa is, and he gets the evidence to the queen. The queen takes the advice of the kindly, magical man who has been appearing through the whole movie and lets it all go. The Vanessas switch back, and Princess Vanessa comes clean to Edward. She comes to the baking competition, which Baker Vanessa and Kevin, of course, win. And Kevin is like, the truth comes out. Bargain bin Benedict Cumberbatch literally begs Baker Vanessa to marry him. She agrees and the movie ends. Now on to the princess switched again. The King of Montenaro has died and the actual heir abdicated, so Princess Vanessa must take the throne as queen. She and Kevin broke up when he realized all their spontaneous fun had to end, and she went off to train for her coronation. I'm really glad there's no, she has to get married to be queen, or, ooh, they have to change the law for a girl to inherit the throne kind of thing. Baker Vanessa and Prince Edward have been married for a couple years now, and she is distracted by constantly needing to do princess shit and worrying about her friends when the prince just wants to f his wife. She flies to Chicago on the way to Montenaro for the coronation to convince Kevin to come and see Princess Vanessa one more time while Edward awkwardly says he will meet her there. When Baker Vanessa arrives, Kevin is visibly sad and lonely. We know this because he grew a beard and wears grungy clothes now. Weird how he's allowed to look all frumpy about his breakup, but Baker Vanessa was still perfectly dressed and nicely made up at all times in the first movie, even though she was sad about her breakup. This is also a whole different child playing Olivia. They just picked a random little girl with curly hair and hoped the audience wouldn't notice. Baker Vanessa talks Kevin into going to the coronation to support Princess Vanessa. He finally agrees and tells imposter Olivia to call the cat sitter. Princess Vanessa is there to greet everyone they arrive. She looks at Olivia like, "Ah, vote her out! I saw her vent! That is not Olivia!" Nobody believes her and the imposter stays. I see 2 years has not improved the accent. Baker Vanessa sees that the palace is still all packed up and gets everyone to start decorating since Christmas is coming. Princess Vanessa and Kevin go to make hot cocoa in the kitchen and wind up in a flower fight. True by Jared Kushner interrupts to prep Princess Vanessa for a meeting the next day. They look pretty cozy and Baker Vanessa stumbles in. There's some physical comedy and jokes about tinsel that really tickled me. She really shines with physical comedy. That's something that a lot of former Disney stars have in common. A lot of the Disney Channel style writing revolved around physical comedy, so when you see them as adults and stuff like this, you can see how they've really perfected that style. Baker and Princess Vanessa talk in private about obviously evil guy, and Princess Vanessa tries to convince herself that Kevin probably doesn't want her, so she should settle for somebody like Q-Tip who is helpful and knows the ins and outs of her new job. At the big ball, everybody looks nice and fancy. Baker Vanessa and the imposter shove Kevin toward Princess Vanessa. He slides in between her and Hans from Frozen ripoff to ask her to dance. Finally, we meet the real star of the show. Evil twin Vanessa and her 2 lackeys, Reggie and Mindy. She's actually Princess Vanessa's cousin and is scandalous. She says lull and purses her lips a lot when she's not talking. She's the family wild child and nobody knows how she funds her lifestyle. Turns out it's by having her goons steal shit for her. Her accent is all over the place, but what I'm starting to notice in this movie more than the first is that Vanessa Hudgens' ability to physically act really does sell the idea of her being different people, even when they are all dressed identically and in the same movie. She really was perfectly cast for this. In the first one, we largely saw the way other people reacted to her as our yardstick for who she was at any given moment. By the end of this one, when they all look alike, it's still easy to tell them apart because of the tiniest things like the way she shifts her weight when she stands. It's neat to see details like that in movies that you don't expect that much effort to be put into. It kind of slaps you out of your preconceived notion of what these types of movies are supposed to be. The next day, Kevin and Princess Vanessa are supposed to go for a drive together, but Weaselface drags her away under false pretenses. He tries to woo her, and she kind of gives him the awkward, "Oh, hey, thanks, but like my ex who I'm obviously trying to work things out with is here, and you're making this real weird, and this romantic gesture is kind of awkward, dude." She gives him a non-committal answer and leaves. He drags Kevin in and tries to scare him off by saying that he's holding the future queen back by being a whore. The imposter overhears this and runs to the Vanessas who are having a chat about the whole Kevin thing. They come up with a new plan to switch places again, but only for a few hours this time. Baker Vanessa will take Princess Vanessa's place at a state function so she can go off on a date with Kevin and they can get some time alone to really talk. I like the justification for switching in this one a lot more than I liked the justification in the first one. The first movie, it was like they needed to get the pieces into place without a lot of thought into the why, though they decide not to tell Prince Edward for absolutely no discernible reason. They say it's to reduce the amount of people who know, but much like last time, it makes no sense. It makes even less sense than last time because it's her husband. I usually try to distinguish between the viewer, can see this is not the logical course of action, and the character in the story making a mistake because people make mistakes. But they tell not just Mrs. Donatelli, but Frank, the guy who had a rage boner for Baker Vanessa the entire last movie, but now after 2 years of service to her, loves the shit out of her. He knows, but not her husband? Even though all of this means telling really elaborate lies that will easily be uncovered. The only reason for it is so they can have the scene where Edward unknowingly confesses to who he thinks is Princess Vanessa, his marital issues with his wife. And then we have to be sad because she can't say anything to reassure him because she's pretending to be someone else. Now, what the first 2 Vanessas don't know during this whole time is that evil Vanessa and her people have worked out a plan inspired by the original swap, which is public knowledge. Evil Vanessa wants money to fund her lavish lifestyle forever, so they decide to cut and dye her hair and kidnap Princess Vanessa on Christmas Eve. Then evil Vanessa will wake up Christmas Day and be crowned queen. She can then write a check for lots of money to herself from the royal treasury, and they can all escape to the Cayman Islands. While the two original Vanessas are doing their costume changes, we get a montage of evil Vanessa trying to figure out how to act like her cousin. Vanessa Hudgens is having so much fun here, and it is a joy to watch. Princess Vanessa goes off with Kevin, and they have a romantic day together in a deserted Christmas town type place that hero Mrs. Donatelli has arranged for them. Edward confides in who he thinks is Princess Vanessa about how he feels like Baker Vanessa isn't happy in their marriage. Imposter manipulates Edward into taking her Christmas shopping to keep him away from the room where his wife is supposedly sleeping with a headache, and this little girl calls him a helicopter husband. After the concert Baker Vanessa attended in Princess Vanessa's place, she is snatched up by the evil lackeys and switched again. She tries to tell them who she is, but they ignore it. Back at the palace, evil Vanessa shits herself when she hears Princess Vanessa calling. You can actually see the moment where her soul leaves her body. She acts like she doesn't know what Princess Vanessa is talking about, and since she is still dressed as Baker Vanessa, pulls the, well, I look like me, and you look like this other person, so I will call the guards if you don't get out. You can't prove that you're who you say you are. Princess Vanessa leaves, and evil Vanessa calls her people in a panic. They decide to demand the coronation be moved up to tonight because the ruse is going to unravel fast with the real princess wandering around, even if she looks like the baker. Princess Vanessa goes to find Edward to tell him what's up. Mrs. Donatelli and Frank come in, and turns out evil Vanessa has fired Donatelli. They all realize that can't be Baker Vanessa, and Edward has this sudden epiphany of, wait, if you're here, and the person up there is not my wife, then where the is my wife? Kevin comes to see his lady, and evil Vanessa takes pleasure in sending him away from Montanaro heartbroken because she knows he will figure out who she is pretty fast too. Leave a pin in that, it will be important later. Instead of going to say goodbye to his best friend before leaving, which would clear up this whole thing, Kevin somehow gets all of his packed in like 10 minutes and gets a cab and somehow also his plane ticket on a direct flight from Montanaro to Chicago. He and the imposter are getting in the cab, and she asks him if he's sure, and he says, yep, let's go. That's how we know she's an imposter. The real Olivia would have wanted to go and say goodbye to Baker Vanessa. The cab driver is Christmas Magic guy from the first movie, though, so we know that everything is going to be okay. The gang are sitting around trying to decide what to do, and they figure out that it has to be the cousin upstairs, and it's likely for Baker Vanessa to be stashed in the country estate. They pile into Frank's car, and he floors it.
It's a good thing that these are registered weapons.
Frank is ready to whoop some for Vanessa. He is not playing around. Very clearly evil guy comes to talk his princess out of moving the coronation, and evil Vanessa tries to command him. He recognized the tattoo on her hand, though, and knows who she actually is. He surprises absolutely no one when he demands to be let in on the scheme. He helps her get everything set up to move the coronation in exchange for a hefty sum of money for the both of them. Back at the country estate, the lackeys are bringing food to Baker Vanessa, who they now know is actually the princess of another country. She has regained her senses, however, and f***s Reggie's up and escapes. She runs out and... Sick. She runs outside in time to meet her rescuers, and Edward gets to land a solid punch on Reggie. Baker Vanessa apologizes to Edward for lying, and he apologizes for being a helicopter husband, and they make up. They rush to the palace to stop the coronation. Antonio tries to have the guards arrest the real Princess Vanessa, knowing that he is complicit in treason. Baker Vanessa steps in and vouches for what's going on. They let evil Vanessa know that Reggie and Mindy are in police custody, and she caves. She immediately throws Toothpick under the bus, and Princess Vanessa has him taken to the dungeons. Evil Vanessa tells a sob story about how she always wanted to be like Princess Vanessa, and heavily leans on the nepotism angle to get out of punishment. And it works! Princess Vanessa agrees to talk to the judge about a reduced sentence and a lot of community service for attempted treason. And okay. So you didn't kidnap the future queen of your own country, so no. You didn't commit treason. You conspired to commit treason, but you didn't actually commit it. Okay, yeah, I'll buy that. But you did succeed in kidnapping the princess of another country, which is an act of war, probably? At the very least, it could create an international incident between the two countries. And she gets community service? Baker Vanessa is looking around like, what? Excuse me? I'm from Chicago. There's probably some poor kid on the corner of my old bake shop right now getting 20 years for having a little bit of drugs in his pocket. And this rich, privileged bitch kidnapped me, the princess of a fucking country, trying to steal money from your treasury, and she gets community service because she said, oh, I'm sorry, and I love my cousin so much. Rich people. Now here's where we come back to that pin, too. Evil Vanessa admits that she broke Kevin's heart and sent him away. She needs him gone for a single night, not forever. She did that shit out of spite, knowing that it would break her cousin's heart. But she pouts a little and all is forgiven because fucking rich people. Christmas Magic Guy has taken a super roundabout way to the airport, and Kevin has a moment of recognition when they get out of the cab. The Vanessas are rushing to the airport to catch them. On arrival, they spill all the beans, and it's honestly kind of sweet. It's a real classic catch them at the terminal before they leave moment. Hyper ultra cheesy, but executed pretty well. They kiss and propose to each other. Kevin has a ring that he'd bought the summer before. On a whim, they ask a random priest who is about to board his flight to do a quickie wedding ceremony. He does it and runs off to catch his plane. The next day is the coronation, and it's all beautiful and happy. Everybody looks snazzy. There are many royal guests attending. Now get ready for that other pin that we were going to come back to. This is the end of the movie. I was having so much fun up until right about here. Let me play that back for you. Do you recognize them? That's King Richard and Queen Amber and their f***ing baby from the Christmas Prince Netflix series. Do you remember what Baker Vanessa's favorite movie is? How? I stopped this movie and went back 3 times. I screamed at my TV. I spent a couple hours on Discord trying to work out my frustration at the very important canon being tossed aside like so much garbage. We established, okay, that A Christmas Prince is a film in this universe. This is very important information in the Vanessa Hudgens Christmas movie canon. We also, if you watch my episode on The Night Before Christmas, have established that A Night Before Christmas takes place in the Christmas Prince universe. So, if the space-time continuum has been ripped apart and the worlds have been merged, then that means there's also a small town in Ohio with the 4th Vanessa Hudgens in it. So in the next movie, I will be really upset if they don't cross the streams and bring in the medieval knight to hang out with Edward and Kevin while all 4 Vanessa Hudgens stand an awkward distance apart looking at each other so that they can get all of the images of them spliced together on the screen. How many more can we fit in one movie? That's so many expensive looking scarves and cups of hot cocoa. Did the imposter Olivia break the barrier between the worlds? Was A Christmas Prince a documentary in this world? What happened to the real Olivia? I realized while watching these 2 movies that I was having a lot more fun than I expected. Vanessa Hudgens seems perfectly suited for cheesy holiday movies, and the ones she is in do way more work than they need to in the genre to set up and pay off their story. Her physical comedy is on point in a very ex-Disney star kind of way, and there are so many bright spots where I expected to be really annoyed by something and was instead surprised that my low expectations were shattered. I already mentioned the lack of any drama over a girl inheriting the throne, but there's also the really great kidnapping sequence. From start to finish, it doesn't take more than a few hours, and the moment she regains her senses, Baker Vanessa sets up her own rescue. By the time her husband arrives to valiantly rescue her, she's already escaped on her own. It reminded me a lot of the ending of Ever After. He does get his big moment of coming to save her, but she also doesn't have to be the damsel who can't help herself. Overall, I think all of these movies were pretty good. They're the kind of movies that you watch and cringe, but still have a lot of fun with. I do think that a lot of the comedy works better in the Princess Switch movies than in The Night Before Christmas, but I think that's because I have time travel fatigue, so that's really a personal thing. My rankings of the Vanessa Hudgens movies are The Princess Switch switched again in the top spot, The Night Before Christmas comes in next, and then the original Princess Switch comes in last. Thanks very much for watching. If you like this video, please don't forget to like the video. It really does help me out. Leave a comment with your thoughts and subscribe to see more. If you'd like to support me in what I do, head on over to patreon.com/writingwomen. And I put her in the credits last time, but I want to do an actual verbal shout out to my friend Chanel Lawrence, who has helped me a lot with the last 2 videos that I've put out. I would not have been able to make them as funny as they are without her assistance, because she's one of the funniest people that I know. Thank you to my current patrons: Mariodoc Brandybuck, Ms. Psycho, Amy Chu, aka the Doctor, Lord Butterbutt, Bruce, Red, and Kirsten. See you next time.